So good morning, friends. Here I am at the Witch Trials Memorial, right in the heart of downtown Salem here. Early morning, out for a jog. Thought I would pay some respects to these innocent victims that lost their lives in 1692 during this terrible hysteria that would grip the area. But today we're going to be talking about somebody in particular, one of the most beloved victims, one of the saddest stories of the witch trials, a woman named Rebecca Nurse. So many stories in this memorial, but maybe one of the saddest ones is Rebecca Nurse, because Rebecca Nurse, one of the most beloved members of the community in 1692, living in Old Salem Village. She's about 71 years old, wife, mother, grandmother, beloved community member, avid churchgoer, very, very religious woman. One day there's a knock on her door, she's sick in bed, and it is a group of people from Salem accusing her of being a witch. In total disbelief, you can't blame her, no reason why this woman be accused of witchcraft. Well, maybe one reason, maybe she had some grievances with the Putnam family. Putnam family would accuse a good majority of the people that would be under the accusation of witchcraft in 1692. We'll never know exactly what would motivate them to accuse her, but that would become one of the prime accusations. Others would sort of jump in, and then she would eventually be brought to trial. Such a sad case. People were so brave in the community back then that they signed a petition saying, there's no way, of all the people in the community, Rebecca Nurse absolutely cannot be working for the devil. Carried no weight at all. She would be tried. She would be found not guilty, something that may surprise some of you, right? Because we know all of these people were executed. However, they would be asked to continue to try her. Perhaps the devil has clouded their judgment. As the trial continues on, after this not guilty verdict, Rebecca Nurse gets tired. Perhaps she does not hear some of the questions right. And the girls in the front row who accused her of witchcraft start doubling down on their fits. And all of this new evidence that would present itself in the courtroom suddenly, she is then found guilty. She would actually get a reprieve from the governor, right? All these sort of times when possibly she dodged this very sad fate. However, pressure from the accusers, pressure from the Putnam family, the governor takes back this reprieve. She would eventually be hanged with 5 others on July 19th, 1692. Well, let's go see where she lived. Well, hello friends. I'm finding myself in Danvers doing some errands. Rebecca Nurse Homestead happens to be open. It's not open too often, really just on Saturdays during the summer, so I thought I'd stop in and would take a look. Very significant historical site if you're interested in the 1692 witch trials. So let's go down the road and take a peek. So this beautiful first period home from the 1600s is the Rebecca Nurse Homestead, one of the only buildings, original buildings, where victim of the 1692 witch trials lived in her lifetime, knowing that like a lot of these first period houses, this house was in transition. The way it looks today is not entirely the home that she lived in. The portion she lived in is likely around the back over here as we walk behind this building. And naturally the wind is whipping up, so hopefully this is not too bad for audio. If you go behind this building, sort of to the right of this big chimney up here, is probably the portion of the home where Rebecca Nurse lived and where Rebecca Nurse, very sadly, would be arrested under this charge of witchcraft. Over the years, though, I'll show you a little model that I took a photo of that will tell you the different portions of this house in the years they were added on to create the home that we see here today. So over here outside the house, you'll see the replica gardens. Remembering that if you grew anything, It was definitely not for beauty. It was something you could make medicine from or something you could eat. Puritans were really just about taking care of business, right? It wasn't a lot in line of pleasure. It was mostly taking care of the family, surviving, and praying. That was pretty much your life as a Puritan. Not the happiest existence. This building over here would be erected on this land in the 1980s to be used as part of the set of the movie Three Sovereigns for Sarah, referring to the three sisters accused of witchcraft: Sarah Cloyce, Mary Easty, and Rebecca Nurse. It is thought to be as close to a replica of the original 1692 meeting house where Reverend Paris would preach his sermons as possible. So let's go in. So we're walking into a representation of what would have been similar to the meeting house back in 1692. The meeting house where Reverend Samuel Paris would give his fiery sermons that were not so popular, resulting in he and his family having decreased attendance, running out of money because they mostly paid him in firewood, and with less people going to his sermons, firewood was limited. Didn't help that this was the mini ice age and they were absolutely freezing and running out of firewood. But this is gives you an idea of the size of this meeting house, how small it would be. So here you have the pulpit where someone like Samuel Paris would be preaching to the community here. These services would last for hours. They are all day events. You're sitting in very uncomfortable circumstances. Either you're in the balcony up there, you're down here on these benches that are in the back of the room here. Absolutely freezing. There is no heat. You will see there is no fireplace. Imagine, we'll go to the start of the witch hysteria, 1692, sitting in an absolutely freezing cold room like this for hours, listening to the preacher up here, Samuel Paris, pretty much tell you how terrible everybody is here. They would call you out on your sins, literally preach to you. Look how close you are to the reverend here and to each other. So interesting over here also, you're going to look at this stick against the wall. This was used quite a bit. This would be a stick to make sure that you were paying attention. You'd either be poked with the stick down here, or you'll see on this end there's a little feather. You start to fall asleep during one of these sermons, you might feel that little feather tickling your nose, wake you right the heck up, so you continue to be preached to about how the devil is going to condemn us all. So interesting to see this reenactment. The actual meeting house would have been in Danvers, very close to where the monument is today, and there was a sign telling you that's where the original meeting house would be. But let's just say, not a lot of fun times in these buildings. So inside the meeting house here, there is this display board with some interesting information. I apologize, the lighting is a little odd. Sometimes you would get some sort of reflection here that makes it difficult. But it shows you a map of Essex County back in 1692. The land borders between the different cities would be much different back then than it is today. Also talks about people that were accused of witchcraft by the town they originated from. And what you'll see here is that it is not just Salem. Certainly, a good chunk is from Salem, but look at Andover in the blue on the top right. Many more from Andover, people from all around the region. The hysteria was a regional event. The trials themselves, yes, they did take place in Salem, Salem town, modern day Salem today, but the event of the hysteria actually swept through the entire region. And this chart over here will tell you the town or city of the people who were executed during the trials. So you can see Salem town, which is modern day Salem, certainly has some victims, but we also have Amesbury, Andover, Ipswich, Marblehead, Rowley, Topsfield, Salem Village, which today is Danvers. So it's important to remember when we talk about the Salem witch trials that significant events happened in Salem, but Salem does not exclusively own the event of the hysteria that happened in 1692. So something I do talk about on my tour, something I don't hear a lot of people talk about, because, you know, good God, there's got to be something good that happened during this time. There would actually be a gentleman from Boston who would pay the debt of those accused of witchcraft who had been cleared, who could not afford to pay their own debt to be released. So imagine the reaction you'd have when you found out that you're cleared of these charges. Oh, hey, wait, yeah, just pay your bill and you're all set. How can I pay my bill? Sure, I pretty much stole everything from me, homeless and penniless. Well, no worries. When you can pay your bill, we'll release you. When people started to die from the conditions of these jails, kindness would set in to at least one wealthy gentleman in Boston who would settle the debt of those who could not pay for themselves. And thanks to that gentleman, who some believe are anonymous, who some believe his name was Mr. Osborne, as with everything in 1692, you have to know we're not positive about a lot of this history. But we do know, thanks to the kindness of a gentleman, those who could not afford originally to be released were freed. So always, always a little bit of kindness, even on the darkest times. So here's the homestead over here. We're now going to head down this little path off to the side to find the family burial ground. And of course, as is common for my videos, all sorts of stuff's going on that makes it very loud, including mowing the field over here. What are you gonna do? In a field at the bottom of the hill behind the Nurse family homestead, Rebecca Nurse homestead, is this burial ground for the Nurse family. In the center of this burial ground, there is a monument here dedicated to Rebecca Nurse. It is highly thought and believed that her family would take her body in the cover of night, likely on a boat on what would have been the North River at the time, that would have gone very close to where the hanging spot was, now identified as Proctor's Ledge, that they would have brought her body onto that boat and placed it somewhere here in an unmarked grave. So the irony is that if you were a victim of the witch trials who was executed, in general there really is no place to pay respects to these people aside from the monuments, because very few people have any markers. This is probably the closest you will come to the burial spot of one of those victims, because I have actually not heard anybody who disputes the fact that likely somewhere on this land is where Rebecca Nurse is buried. Exactly where, though, will always remain a mystery. Back in Salem again at the memorial. Thank you, though, for visiting the Rebecca Nurse homestead with me. If you do visit Salem and you have the time and the availability of a vehicle and the hours fit your schedule, I definitely recommend you visiting the Rebecca Nurse homestead. It is the only home of a victim open to the public on a regular basis. I think it's important to not just sort of get stuck into the stories that we tell in Salem, which we do our best to recreate this very sad history. I think it's important to go to the actual places that do exist still today, where some of these poor victims lived, where some of these events took place. So thank you once again for visiting Salem with me, Salem Town, Old Salem Village, which is Danvers today, and see you guys again soon. Thanks. Bye. Bonus piece. Just want to thank everybody who's come to Salem, who's seen me on the streets and said, hey, YouTube lady. If you see me walking around, and give me a shout out. Happy to say hi, give you some tips, tell you about my beautiful city. Thanks so much for following, you guys. Say goodbye to the birdie. Take care.